Good evening, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And I want to mention a couple of things that I've thought about recently, such as parents who review and supervise their children's online activity or their social activity to look for opportunities to block people or manage it, micromanage it sometimes, unfortunately. And also authorities who do this surreptitiously, without notice or warrants, so to speak. And I want to mention a couple of things. That the culture in America that has been in America since, the 70s, when there were obvious tragedies, huge tragedies that had to be reacted to, both with, firmer laws and supervision by the same people I just mentioned, as well as, until present time and in between, where these, children have been preyed upon by fallout from society here for a lot of reasons. And I don't want to do a deep dive, but I will connect their behavior, the behavior of child predators and serial killers and rapists, with some of the economic problems that are pretty widely known, but the connections between these behaviors and those problems aren't widely known. It's not always a direct connection. There's something in between that usually involves substance abuse and trauma, a pattern of generational trauma. But it always comes from, if you ask me, some type of economic problem where people who are very hard up, families who are hard up, end up drinking or indulging in substances where they, abandon their self-control, and then they end up abusing their kids, and then the kids become so traumatized that they turn into these monsters growing up. And then you have this cyclical problem where it just gets worse and worse. So anyway, long story short, in the 70s, there was a great deal of this in the fallout of the free love movement of the 60s, where everybody was petitioning for freedom and fighting for independence, personal, civil rights, and to buck the authorities, and they succeeded in a lot of ways. Turns out that that success was not without a price, unfortunately. So a lot of the people who enjoyed the freedom that was earned by these protesters in the 60s, in the 70s, they got a lot more freedom than they really needed, and the economic problems I mentioned were at a height in many parts of that decade, and in the 80s as well. You saw a lot of advances in technology designed to protect people in the marketplace, such as you saw safety seals appear on food items for the first time. But anyway, all this is connected to my original comment about parents and authorities supervising their children's activity, in the sense that it hasn't always been this way. Point is, it has not always been this way. Things used to be a lot safer, and in other parts of the world, they still are safer. It's hard to see outside of your local environment if you don't travel a lot. A lot of people just assume that where they live is representative of the world at large. And I want to mention, no, it's not. It definitely is not. And I've actually seen photographic evidence, video evidence, and read things about cultures, communities who are very tightly integrated with their youth, tightly integrated, where people have, the learned impulse control. They have a lot of opportunities to practice impulse control, and they are generally healthy and respectful towards each other. And it sounds funny in this part of the world, right? But people, again, they forget that we have a very unique economic system where people are forced to compete with each other, which makes adversaries out of everybody. And when people are adversaries, you have losers. You have losers. When it's got to be a winner or a loser, you're going to have people who are unhappy, and they're going to, drink and do drugs and beat their kids, and then their kids are going to grow up to be rapists and monsters, just like I said. And then you have the fallout of harsh laws and expectations of interference and micromanagement by a nanny state. So hopefully all that makes sense. And I want to say also that the way to get back on track, where people can just, say, socialize without a great deal of judgment and interference, because something hasn't happened until it's happened. If you're assuming something inappropriate is always going to happen, well, that's the problem for you, actually. You're being paranoid then. People should be allowed to just hang out until and at which there is a complaint and a damage of some kind, and it can be investigated and prosecuted if necessary. But to assume that people are always going to act inappropriately unless you block them somehow, to start people out with a red light, not only is it inappropriate, it's actually illegal to do that. It's against their constitutional rights to presume guilt before innocence. So something to remember, stay out of trouble yourself, because if you jump in between people, you might just be harassing them, even if one of them is a young person. People are allowed to talk to people. People are allowed to shake hands. They're allowed to, have lunch together. They're allowed to get to know each other. And this is how it should be and how it has been. And if you want to gamble on interfering with that stuff as a third party or an authority without any kind of probable cause, you might find yourself in the hot seat. You might come up against somebody who actually knows what they're talking about and defends themselves. So watch out for the bait. Hey, people get baited, especially authorities. They also get baited. There's something called review, reform. There's something called oversight committees. There's something called, secret shoppers is the word I'm looking for. And you never know. You just never know. So don't assume the worst. Hey, give people the benefit of the doubt. And let's get this thing back on track economically so that we don't have to worry so much about people. Reach out if you like with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.